Hello. I just want to thank everybody for joining us post the reviewing of SAHM by Sonhara Eastman. And I am so pleased to have Sonhara here with us this afternoon, evening, morning, wherever or whichever time that you find yourself tuning in or streaming this. And I think that this will be a very exciting. All of the conversations are exciting, but just from the title alone, I immediately kind of found myself throwing myself and remembering the time that I was sort of thrust into being in the workforce, or like working out of the house, to being a work from home mom. And so I just sort of got right into it because this play, like just even that title, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember all of it. I don't, some of it I don't know if I want to remember, but I remember all of those moments. My children are home from school. So there's a lot of life in the house, as I'm sure there is with you. But Sonhara, I just want to welcome you here.
Thank
and
you.
And just have you introduce yourself a bit, and just share with us what brought you to writing, and what brought you to this piece.
Sure. As Garlia mentioned, my name is Sonhara. I am a playwright and a screenwriter. And as relates to this work, as I shared with the group prior, it took me 7 years to conceive. And so that was a journey in and of itself. And then when I had my daughter, we were about maybe 5 or 6 months into COVID. And so that started a new journey. Where I became, I would say, an accidental stay-at-home mom. And so, I was doing all the things, doing theater fellowships while my kid is here, and I have it on Zoom. And, it just became like a really interesting world to me, because my husband was at work. Not only was he at work, but he was traveling for work. So there never was a time where I felt like, okay, at 5 o'clock, I can, get onto these Zooms, or I can go write this play or finish this play. There never was a breakdown time. It was like, how do I incorporate all these things into my day, not get any sleep, and then still get up the next day and do it again? But, when you're an artist, like, you're hungry for that. But it also made me think about just like the average stay-at-home mom, the things that they go through, especially when you have multiple kids. I just have the one kid. But when you have multiple kids and like you don't get a break, this is your job, your full-time job. So I really just wanted to immerse myself in this world and really explore more of the stay-at-home mom perspective. And I want to say I've always been a playwright, but I went back to school in 2014, went to grad school at NYU. And that's really where I honed my skills as a writer, and started to focus on the things that I thought were important to me, and stories that I felt needed to be told, such as this one.
And I'm thinking about you really being thrown into this staying at home situation during the lockdown period, right, of the pandemic. And thinking about, I think you mentioned sort of this aspiration of having your child home with you, and sitting next to you. And I think I shared, even in that first rehearsal day that we had, and I said, I get this play so much because I tell this story all the time, and people hear me, especially around BMPFest, and telling the story of how I dreamed that I said, okay, I'm gonna have a kid. Okay, right. This is a thing we can do. I knew by the time I knew, it was a girl, and I was like, or she, that she was, and so I said, okay, my daughter is going to sit next to me in this high chair,
Yes.
and this baby under 6 months old, it will sit upright and play with their toys.
Yes.
And that's how life is going to be. And of course, as we all know, that's not how it goes. It's not how it went for me at all.
Yeah.
And did I write any of those plays and become the next anything, Pulitzer Prize winning play? I mean, I became something. I'm not going to like put myself down. I definitely became a lot of things, but I did not during my children's infancy become like a Pulitzer Prize winning like playwright, because where was I finding the time to write at all between all of those things? And so that was something I definitely, you know, shared. But we didn't have the pandemic, right? And so and the times that, you know, I felt alone, I could still have friends over, right? It wasn't like that lockdown period of almost a year or so when we were just truly isolated. And so thinking about how, you know, what was the weight of that time on you, you know, and your journey. Yeah.
I would say it was very, very stressful. And so for me, the first thing was that, okay, well, I don't want to complain, right? Because it took me so long to have a kid. So it was like the guilt of that, like I can't complain. And then in the beginning, like you said, like I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. Like, you know, I'll just take her wherever I go, you know, we'll travel, do all those things. In the beginning, although it wasn't easy, we were traveling. And so if my husband was on place, you know, I would get on the plane with her and like we would go. And then obviously pandemic happens, and then it's like, okay, like this will probably last for a few weeks, whatever it is, and go away. But then it stuck. And so just trying to get childcare, trying to get sitters, all those things just came to a halt. And so the realization that it's just you and your child, and you have to do all the things, all the things 7 days a week, 7 days out of the week. It's like, okay, you know, well, how am I going to navigate this? How am I going to do this? And so I remember days just being like so exhausted, like just beyond exhausted. Like as soon as I would sit down, I would fall asleep. And during those times, like I didn't want to nap because I'm like, I have to write during this time. Like I need to read during this time, and like putting all this pressure on myself to make all these things happen when I'm just one person. And so I would definitely say stressful. I definitely think I put too much pressure on myself. My husband will always say, like, you're signing up for too many things. Why are you doing these things? But the funny thing is, like, I would sign up for theater fellowships and like, oh, okay, because you know how it is. You apply to things and hundreds of people are applying. You may get it, you may not get it. But then like I was getting picked. So then I'm like, oh crap, like I have like 3, I'm selected for 3 things. Like, how am I going to do this? And then one time he came home for like 2 weeks and he was like, are you going to come to bed? I'm like, no, I cannot sleep. Like, I'm just going to stay up. I'm going to stay up all night and just finish this play. And I'm going to do the next one. That's what I did. But it was insanity. It was complete insanity. And yeah, just, I know I reached a point of exhaustion. And then one day I just was in the bed. Then I got out of the bed and I just felt so exhausted. And I went and laid on the floor. I was on my back and I started texting my family, like, I need someone to come help me, like today. Like I just felt like the exhaustion, like my body was physically like shutting down from not sleeping, from doing all the things and never getting a break. I literally felt like my system was shutting down. And because of the pandemic, my family doesn't live here, nobody came. So then I had to pick myself up off the floor and get back into my routine and just say to myself, like, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. But the idea that motherhood is easy is a lie. The idea that your kid's going to sit there and be quiet is a lie. Some kids may do it. My kid didn't do it. Okay. And now she just turned 3 and she's still not sitting there being quiet. You know, like some kids may sit there and be quiet. She's not going to sit there and be quiet. And I think even those expectations where people are like, oh, why don't you take her there? Just make her be quiet. She's a kid. Like kids talk, kids express themselves. So I feel like I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself just to stick with my artistry and make sure I didn't, let that fall by the wayside, and to be the best mom and to breastfeed and to make her foods and all those things. Like, I'm like, okay, I gotta puree her food. Like, I gotta do all these things. And I was completely exhausted. The idea that your kid's gonna sit there and be quiet is a lie. Some kids may do it. My kid didn't do it. Okay. And now she just turned 3 and she's still not sitting there being quiet. Like, some kids may sit there and be quiet. She's not going to sit there and be quiet. And I think even those expectations where people are like, oh, why don't you take her there? Just make her be quiet. So I wanted to talk about that. And I also wanted to talk about, parenting, being married and parenting alone, because I know that there's a segment of people, especially people in the military, who have to deal with this. Their husbands are gone for months at a time and they're parenting alone. So I wanted to speak to that and just speak to also the hard work that stay-at-home parents do. And so I didn't see the post initially. One of my friends I went to grad school with messaged me and was like, hey girl, you should apply to this. But she had just read, I sent her a web series I was working on dealing with the same subject matter. And so she was like, you need to apply to this, like, seriously. And I was like, well, I don't really have anything written yet. I just have like my web series. She's like, okay, well, you don't know if you're going to get picked. So just convert it, tweak it, do whatever, and see what happens. And so I was like, okay, so then I sent it. And then I know it was a couple months went by and you guys reached out to me and said, okay, if I was going to write the play, how would I write it? I was like, oh, okay. Well, I would write it like this with these 2 generations, with Sabi, who's the main character, and then with there being an older woman who's retired, and having the 2 of them connect. Because I feel like every time we see someone who's older, it's always about them telling us what to do, right? Versus showing the connection. And I also feel like women, as you get older, like, people try to discard you. Like, actors say this all the time, like they're in their 50s, 60s, people don't really want to work with them. And so I thought about just humanizing a character in that way. Okay, what happens if she is living alone and she doesn't have family either? How can I make these 2 women who are on 2 different paths, one a stay-at-home mom and another one who's a widow, how can I make the 2 of them connect? And I just felt like there was something there to explore, and something there to talk about 2 different experiences of being mothers at 2 different time periods. And so I think that's what I tried to highlight.
Yeah, I love that, because there really is something to that experience, and finding people that you can connect with. I remember meeting Sandra Daly Sharif, who is one of the founders of Harlem 9. And I'm one of the founding producers. And when we met, she had two her girls were like, one was in elementary school and the other one was like really small, like 4 or something. And then over the course of working, producing our 48-hour play festival with Harlem 9, I now have 2 kids, right? And so when I started, I didn't have kids. So, but I was always looking for who were the other people like this, right? Like, who am I gonna even talk to? Who's gonna even understand this? And also, I wasn't working a traditional job.
Yeah.
And so I did all the things I did between Blackboard and Harlem 9 and photography with my 2 kids in my carrier, right? Or in a stroller. And this was when I lived in the city. And then for a bit, I didn't even have a car. So this was just me, non-job at the public, I worked at a smaller theater. And then I also just didn't work. I did all the side gigs, right? It's just like freelance hustle mentality was my life with my children for like half of their existence. So truly, any moment that I found a person who was raising children in the arts, right? Just doing it, taking them to their rehearsals because they had to. I was like, okay, I was just keeping an eye on that, right? And so really hoping that as this festival grows, this is that space for others to see, oh, there's other people who are doing that, right? And it's the same with, PAL, the Parent Arts Advocacy League, because this festival is a partnership between Blackboard Plays and PAL. And when I found PAL and received a childcare grant, I was like, what is this? Like a whole, like just to meet parents, right? The first step was like meeting parents who are in the theater doing this and trying to make it work. And then then trying to really focus on Black parents was like, whoa, and caregivers too. Because I feel like, especially in the Black community, our aunts and uncles, and I think this also really goes for a lot of communities of color. Our aunts and uncles and cousins are often just like blended into this immediate tribe, right? And so how do we operate as caregivers, and what are those stories? And so and so just thinking about anytime you meet people, you're like, yes, can I just hang out? Can I just
exactly. Yeah. And I've always felt that. And even in my community now, because I moved during the pandemic and I met a few parents, no one I meet works in the arts. And so it's always like a connection, but like a disconnect, because they have their 9 to 5, their regular, they don't understand like the life or, the schedule of someone who's an artist, and so okay, cool, so it's kind of like a blank wall sometimes that you're like, I wish I knew someone else who lived around here.
you're like, where might that person be? Exactly. Point me in that direction.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that those type of resources are more easily found, especially after, I won't say that the pandemic is over, but especially as we've gone through the various stages of it, but I feel like there was this concentrated moment where, because we're all home and we're trying to figure out things online and make more groups. So do you feel like that time has been beneficial to you?
I think
community?
The beneficial thing has been Zoom, because I would not be able to, even the fellowships I participated in, I would not be able to do them if they were not through Zoom, because I would not have childcare. I would not be able to get to all these places and, do all these things. So the benefit, although I was doing way too much, the benefit of the pandemic was that the world in theater and TV film discovered a new medium. Oh, we don't actually have to be in the same space. Oh, we can do this online, or we can do this through Zoom. Oh, okay, let's do this. So that I would say, created a little bit more opportunity where I didn't have to be someplace and I didn't have to say no, because I'm a parent now and I can't be in that place. So I definitely feel like it created opportunity. And it always brings me back to, I was watching a TV show, Bel Air, and the mom, she plays it was Ambi's character, and she talks about being an artist and how she gave it up to take care of her kids. And I always write notes to myself. So that's one of the things that I wrote a note to myself about. Someone has to be the one making the sacrifice. And so in that particular situation, like, she made the sacrifice, like, I'm going to do the things, I'm going to nurture the kids, I'm going to raise the kids. But in that, like, as moms, as women, as Black women, we give up something. whether our art takes a back seat, whether it's a job opportunity that we really wanted, whatever it is, like we give up something. And I really want the focus to be more on that, where we don't have to give up. Even as programs are developed, like what women don't have to give up, what Black women don't have to give up to be mothers. Like, why do we have to give up things to become a mom? Like, we should be able to maintain all the things we have and find resources to support our artistry, support whatever it is that we're doing. So yeah.
Yes, that is true. Do you feel like TV and film versus theater is more so supportive of this journey, or do you feel like it's a little bit of the same?
I think it's basically most of the same. I can't say supportive. I definitely know when I was pregnant and I made it known to a particular employer that I was pregnant, they didn't want to hire me. And I was really sad about it because I really wanted the opportunity and I wasn't going to say anything. And my husband was like, you should tell them, because we both were nervous having, like I said, 7 years and okay, we don't want anything to go wrong. And so I was still traveling back and forth to LA and I was living out there. And I was like, as long as I come back before I'm 8 or 9 months, like I'm good. And he was like, you should tell them, you should tell them that you're pregnant just so they know. And then they just kind of emailed back, like, we don't think this is the right opportunity for you right now. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So it's still that thing of you can be so excited about a new path you're on and so excited about a journey that you're on, and you can still lose an opportunity just because you're becoming a parent or that you are a parent. So yeah, I think it's more the same, that we don't do enough to cultivate and to take care of mothers and people working in the industry.
That is really hard, thinking about losing opportunities, or you're feeling as if you have to do more when you feel like I feel like I was talking about this afternoon, because I feel like before I had kids, I was able to sort of just work all night, pull all-nighters.
Exactly.
I got to the place in my life that I am now because I really I worked really hard, and I also went really hard. I probably went too hard. Maybe I don't know. I just was trying to get stuff somewhere. And now, even if I try, I can't. I'm too tired.
Yeah.
But that feeling I have of being less than because I can't stay up all night anymore. Which is ridiculous, right? Exactly. I shouldn't feel like I'm not as I'm not doing enough because I can't not sleep, right? That's not a good work-life balance choice. But I feel like particularly in the theater, sometimes we're really hard for smaller resources, right? The resources are just few and far, are not as big or don't cover everything, and so then we're piecing together so many different parts of a salary from different places to create something whole. And so I just I think just thinking about that too, and that is part of this journey of balancing your caregiving and the resources that I think a lot of people don't talk about openly, right? They're scared to sort of talk about the reality of what it is. I remember in our Mother's Day panel this year, one of our panelists talked about how they don't take vacations. They do go take their children to see plays, right? And just naming that as a stage manager, and a professor, that like it's still a challenge to do that. And just saying, you know, that people don't talk about that enough, right? And I see colleagues leave. I see people I know who have worked small or big jobs, but like step away because no one's thinking about the resources required for caregiving, right? And like if so someone asks me, okay, what would an extra 10 to 20K do for you? And I say that would help me maybe have some support in like picking up my kids from school, right? Because I'm here working from home, and then at like 2:45 or 2:50, or for me, I push it to the limit because I got to get this email out before I go pick them up, and then that's like 20 minutes in the car or 30 minutes in the car to do car line. Even if I just like walked, I didn't car, that would be even longer. It's a half an hour of time I take out of my day. I have to stop, go get them, come back, and then all that shuffle, and then I come and sit back down. Someone could have sent me an email saying, hey, where's this, or I need that, and it's like, oh my gosh. And so like the resources are so real, right? Just to have that extra, like, just to have that extra hand to be here and to do all these things. So that's my little bit of a tangent, but it just truly,
no, it's a lot.
I get it.
Even now, like I look at the carpool lines when I'm driving, because I pass by all these schools, and I'm taking my daughter and bringing her back, and I look and see, okay, how many women are driving the car? It's like, how are these people getting off of work in the middle of the day to get their kids? Like all these things, like I'm thinking about, okay, like, well, how are they able to do, like, how are all these people able to leave their jobs in the middle? Maybe they don't have jobs. All these things I think about, and I see mainly consistently, not that there are not any men in the carpool line, because there are, but mainly consistently at all the schools I drive by, because you know, police stop you waiting for the carpool lines to go. It's consistently, it's women. And so I'm just wondering, like, oh, okay, well, are they leaving their job and then trying to rush back and taking their kids someplace? So I just try to think about all that juggling. Like I know for me, I get up now super early at 4:30 because I want to have my time in the morning, have my time to get up and write, have my time to get up and work out. And then by 7 o'clock, I'm tired, you know, like I'm tired. And
absolutely,
the idea there just is not enough time in the day to
no,
all these things.
there is not enough. There's not. The other day, I was up very early, and a number of people on my team were also up very early. But I think by early afternoon, early evening, I'll say, I was done. I was like, I don't want to go to sleep now. Like, yes, I got up early and I accomplished, like, I was up at like 4, and that was fine because I had like woken up and was ready to like be up and just like chatting. But then I made the kids lunch, and we try and pack them at night, but like the food portion, if it needs to be heated, I just make it in the morning. So if I made them breakfast, like waffles, made my, you know, coffee, and everyone got to school on time. And I was like, I'm tired. Like,
exactly.
I'm like, can I be done now? But no, I wasn't done. I had to like think and be an adult and talk to people about things and work on planning things.
Breakfast to lunch to dinner, pack the lunch, you know, all these things. It's a lot.
It is a lot. So anyway, but those are just so many reasons I appreciate your play. As we depart, I'm just curious if there's any, you know, anything else that really comes to mind to you to share about this process. And I know you've shared a little bit about where this play comes from after your personal journey to conceive, which I think is just a really powerful context, you know, to as we think about caregiving and parent parent parenthood, and I'm also curious how your journey really affects the stories that you write too, and if, because that journey to conceive and all that goes in there, I have a couple of friends who've been on that. It is an extremely personal one, and it's also one that a lot of people don't know about a lot. And I think there was a time, our parents of that generation, it wasn't something that people talked about, right? It was really kind of kept a hush secret. So I think as we've gotten older and we know how many more people do have challenges, at first I think sometimes it can feel like, how is that? But it's because no one ever talked about it, right? And it isn't talking about things that we say, oh, that is part of this for everybody.
Exactly. I like to write about things that are important. I like to write about things that we don't talk about enough. I write a lot of period dramas, which requires a lot of research. But even as it relates to infertility and stay-at-home mom, those are two things that are personal to me. And so even when you're writing something that's personal to you, like you always have to step away from it and then figure out a different way to tell it. So it doesn't become so closed in. And so with the stay-at-home mom piece, like I just really want people to see, even with the fertility piece, that you're not by yourself. Like there is community out there somewhere. You have to go out and find it. And most of the time, like I said, I'm with people who don't look like me, who may not agree or think like me. But I don't care, as long as I have someone to sit and talk to and to talk about parenthood with. Like I'm good. But there is a place where you're like, okay, where are the Black moms? Where are the Black stay-at-home moms? When I go to the park and all the other moms are grouped together and they all know each other, and I'm the only Black person there, like where are the Black stay-at-home moms? And so I constantly felt like a fish out of water. And so I know the Black stay-at-home moms are out there. I know that they exist. And so I just want to bring light to that, and also bring light to the fact that people think stay-at-home parents don't do anything, because I was doing it all, including my artistry. But even if you're not working a job, even if you're solely focused on being a stay-at-home mom, that's fine too. That's work. It's a lot of work. Hence, hi. See, and you're never off, like it's always like you're constantly on. And so I just wanted to shed light on that, that being a stay-at-home parent isn't easy. And like we had that generations where our grandmothers, at least mine, were stay-at-home moms. And like my mom went to work, and then I accidentally fell into this. But it's, that thing of we shouldn't be ashamed if we want to step away and spend time with our children, cultivate them and do those things. And there has to be a space for that, a community for that, conversation for that, so that people can find their tribe and know that there are people out there who can talk and relate to things you're going through, especially as a first-time mom, because it ain't easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think to your query about Black stay-at-home moms and Black stay-at-home parents, I think just economically, it is not, you do not see a lot of Black parents being able to make the choice, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of my white friends who have stayed home, it is a choice, and maybe they don't have huge incomes, but it's like this converse. It always appears from the outside in to be this conversation about, okay, you're gonna stay home, okay, I'm gonna stay home, and like, okay, now you're staying home, and then you have the resources to do all those little groups, right?
Go to the country clubs.
Well, I'm not even thinking about the country clubs. I'm just thinking about you have the resources to go to the mom mommy and me
Yeah.
classes, right?
Yeah.
Those like
Mhm.
the tummy time
Yeah.
things, like all of that, right?
Mhm.
And this is where I get like slightly triggered, only because I think about being a new parent and like wanting so desperately to
Mhm.
take my kids
Mhm.
to all of this stuff, right?
Mhm.
I wanted to put them in a class for this. I wanted to go do a music class.
Yeah.
And even if it was at the library or like
Mhm.
a little school, it
Yeah.
still felt like a challenge, right? And it
Mhm.
was like, what is like, oh, like by the time you get out the door and
Yeah.
then you have to then go back because
Mhm.
someone missed their nap time or they can't,
Exactly.
it's just
Nap time
can
is critical.
feel it is, right? And it can also feel chaotic, right? And it can also feel like you have to fit within a certain thing. And
Mhm.
I think those resources, like the ability to take a nap, and when people say sleep when the baby sleeps, which
Yeah.
I sometimes find to be a little ridiculous, because
Mhm.
I
There's no time to do that.
didn't feel like I had the
Yeah.
luxury
Yeah.
to nap while my child napped, because I was like working on producing something to
Mhm.
get a couple $100 here to
Exactly.
go and do that, right? And I think,
Exactly.
yeah, and so all of these things are things that your play brings up, but they are also things that we don't get a lot of opportunities to talk about, and we don't get a lot of opportunities to highlight
Yeah.
these moments for Black parents, for Black
Mhm.
caregivers.
Mhm.
And so it's another one of the reasons I really appreciate your work and your play.
Thank you. And I appreciate you guys having me. This has been a wonderful experience. And I'm just grateful to be able to just share my experiences with people and then share the stay-at-home mom experience. And especially people think stay-at-home moms that the household is rich, which some people are. But for most people, well, I would say, I can't say everyone, but for most people, it's like you're going to give something up. Okay, you're not going to go here. You're not going to go on vacation this time. Like this is where you're going to give up. And then we're going to make this work this way. So
Yeah.
it's like give and a take and a tug and, all those things. So yeah.
That concludes. I think we have just had a lot of great, conversations. So I really appreciate your time, and I thank everybody for checking out the second annual Black Motherhood and Parenting New Play Festival. And this is a partnership between Blackboard Plays and PAL, the Parent Artist Advocacy League. So thank you so much for streaming on your phone, on your computer, on your TV, and I hope to see you really soon.